does Marcellus Wallace look like?
What?
What country you from?
What?
What ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English and what?
What?
English, motherfucker! Do you speak it?
Yes.
Then you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Describe what Marcellus Wallace looks like.
What?
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
He's black.
Go on.
He's bald.
Does he look like a bitch?
What?
Does he look like a bitch?
No!
Then why you try to fuck him like a bitch, Brett?
I didn't.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did, Brett. You tried to fuck him. And Marcellus Wallace don't like to be fucked by anybody except Mrs. Wallace. You read the Bible, Brett?
Yes.
Well, there's this passage I got memorized. Sort of fits this occasion. Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who in the name of charity and goodwill shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Yeah.
Can you dig it?
Like some motherfucking action heroes in it. Yeah.
This is blasphemy. This is madness. This is a boom.
Step into the twisted mind of my literature, designed to get into the depths of your mind, administer sickness around to mimic the likes of snuff cinema. What you must get into, you're nothing but pups. Remember you Homer and Happy Simpson, son. Nothing Ithaca. Talkers like the northern half of Korea's peninsula. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister.
All right, it's your boy Citizen broadcasting live for the City of Champions. You are watching The Booth. It is December 2nd. We're a little early. We're 3 minutes early. I've been super busy. Eye operation surgery, as you guys can see. It's still a little bit black and blue here. From I talked about on Thursday how they did. I don't have to wear sunglasses. Again, have my water. I am staying hydrated. Hydration. My guys are here with me. Let me. Michael Douglas Brittle, MDB Electronics. If you all are fixed, you're back to gaming 20. That was MDB Electronics. Deanna Marie Music every 94,000 Street. Gotta reach out her up at Tactical Targets. John Robinson, retired police officer. Actually, got this. Zombie targets you change. I love Boston Sports. Right down there in Plaza. Common photography. Get a photo. Common photography. Armed guards, unarmed guards, event, private security. My buddy called Larry. He 8254. Larry actually came out. Old Sputnik antenna off the side of my house that's drive around and your young kids. On this. That was the big Sputnik satellite looking antennas that was all crazy old school. But it's worth a lot of money because back then it was all metal. topic of the news. But right here is in got my guys here. Today we started the show. Funny because we have a lot of shit to talk about, a lot to break down. I'm actually going to fly through a lot of topics that I do have because there's a lot of shit.
Yeah, let's get down to business.
Tonight is gonna be pretty much kind of our squid show. Questions that we got coming up. There's a lot of shit that we talked about. Get into it in the news. Also, Outer Limits Pro Shop is reporting that the FBI conducted 165,000 firearm purchase checks Black Friday. Doesn't surprise me because Black Friday deal out of control. I actually got something myself. There were deals to be made out there. Also in the booth, hey, I have Cash App. Cash App now allows you to take your change, buy stocks. Your change every up. So I was looking around and I bought Vimeo. I've no time since I've been rounding up and I've been buying this for Vimeo was just purchased and acquired by Ben 1 billion, and this is what surprised me. This is never really dabbled in stocks before. The buyout happened on Thursday. Cash App on Friday already gave me monies buyout, my share, which is like $20. But now I think about it, I'm like, wow, now I see why people get into stock at that bottom level, buy real cheap. And a lot of it real cheap, because this is what happened when it comes and buys out the stock. Is there a law or something, Ken? I'm going to ask Ken this. Dabble and all that stuff. Is there a law that says when the stock is bought that you have to pay out those early investors of that stock within a certain amount of time? This was pretty fast.
Well, yes and no. Most stock contracts have that provision in them. The reason they do that is if you don't, then you basically are on the hook as these people are now part of your company. They want to buy them out because they don't want you as a stockholder in their company. They're basically buying you out. Now, there are laws about that, yes, but are there any laws that require you to pay when they buy people out? No, there is no laws. However, there is a law that says, yeah, after a merger or a buyout, if you had not purchased that stock, that stockholder is now a stockholder of your corporation after 30 days automatically, even if you don't redeem it or do the transfer. So and answer your question, yeah, kinda, I guess. It's complicated.
Well, for those watching out there, to be honest, what this does to me, and even though it's just $20, to be honest, I think I might invest in stocks through the Cash App. Now for you, it gives you protection up to 7 years. It gives you all info, makes it real easy to buy stock. Like I said, this was a pleasant surprise. I found it to be interesting.
I would be very careful though. I tell this to all the people. I myself have an account with E-Trade. I buy my own stocks.
Okay.
But I always tell people, so I'm doing disclosure. I don't want this to be a promotion for E-Trade, but there's a reason I do it. A lot of these companies have hidden fees so when you normally, if you use a stockbroker, it's 2 or 3% commission, sometimes 5, depending on it is. Some of these less than reputable, and I don't know anything about Cash App, so I'm not saying they are, will charge you a transaction fee, which is very common within the industry. It's usually a set price per share. So the more shares you buy, the more money you have to fork over. But then there's also types of maintenance fees and storage fees and stuff like that. You should be very careful to find out how many fees you are paying, because some of the most disreputable ones, you could be paying up to 20% commission.
So they did send me a statement in the on the
Okay.
Not because I've got to report income.
Right.
Send me right away, and if I get it right here.
Yep. Which is perfectly legitimate.
Right now. $5.
Okay. But I would pull up your contract, find out what and all the fees. Now, $5 on a $20 transaction, is it $5 a month on all transactions, or is it just $5 for that transaction?
Just for that payout. So for the stock,
That's a 20% fee. That seems a little high. I would check, that's what I'm saying.
That's $5 on the term of how long I had the stock for.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
I'll send it to you. You can look.
Yeah, send it to me. And I just say, look at your agreement, because you make sure you're not getting ripped off with hidden fees. Yeah. Well, that's true with everything.
Also in the news booth. I was real upset by this one. She-Hulk is reportedly no longer having a. I'm gonna call bullshit on lying to us. Saw She-Hulk end season 1. Green Hulk shows up with Red Hulk, getting into the Hulk movie, Hulk War. Hulk is also Avengers, which they're already assembling West Coast Avengers. So I'm calling bull. Where I think they're others and wanting this back to their getting into the sports booth. Only one thing in the sports booth tonight, and that was last night. Our Patriots took on Rob's Giants, Foxborough last night, Monday Night Football. Kind of a massacre. I was actually nervous for me. Sometimes a team without a reason, sometimes a day. And to be real honest, I still have PT. Perfect season. And the Giants came in here last week of the game. Tom Coughlin was fired. They were going to be handing away, vamped the whole team and out. And Giants came in here, and instead of sitting down, week 17, Giants went on, played their asses off, and even though they lost to the Patriots, made it into the playoffs. Every game on the road. Guess what happened? Giants came back in the Super Bowl. Still a little PTSD. And then the second time they met up in the Super Bowl, Giants beat them again. So last night, good game. Rob, I was surprised when Jackson Dart took a hit. I felt like, man, kid's good. Kid really doesn't have to be in the game. And it got to this point where I'm like, I would just just pull the kid. I was just wondering, was a Giants fan watching, kind of have the same. Hey, it is, and their defense was on point. They were putting licks.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, full disclosure, I didn't see a minute of the game. I wasn't going to waste my time on it. So
wow.
But I will say this, because I certainly saw the coverage, so I saw the hit you're talking about. And I will say this, the whole reason to play him this season, because I would not have played him. Remember when we talked about this weeks ago, I would not have played him this year. I would have had him learn behind, two veteran quarterbacks. Granted, neither of them are very good anymore, but they were there to train him for a year. And then they, everybody got restless and they put him in. So now it's his team. And I thought he should be playing, because this is the only way he's going to develop. and he's picking up skills. He's going to be a great quarterback. Obviously, the team's going nowhere this year, so they don't need to take risks. And obviously, he needs to step out of bounds before taking that hit.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll sign back in. But he obviously has to be smarter than that. And, he had, reaction to that criticism after the game. And he said he's going to play, he's a competitor, whatever. But I'm sure the coach chewed him out for it. And so that's the end of that.
Trying to get Ken back in.
Yeah.
Here he comes. He's coming.
Sorry about that, guys. Fat fingers. I was trying to make some controls on the color, and I hit the stop video tag.
Oh, that's what happened. I'm like, what happened? I heard you laugh there for a second. Your thoughts real quick on the Pats Giants game? I said, I was nervous. They come through.
Oh, absolutely. These are the games you should be nervous about, because teams with nothing to lose are the most competitive, because they've got nothing to lose. They're going to leave it out there. They love to play spoiler, especially with the Giants-Patriots rivalry. Everybody who's a Giants fan, including our co-host, likes to remind me of those 2 Super Bowls that they kicked our ass in. And they did. Let's give it to them, guys. They did. They won those games. They were great games. They were 20 years ago, but that's beside the point. Yeah, that made me nervous. Also, Dart's got to remember that he is a quarterback, not a running back. And when he crosses that line of scrimmage, he gets treated like a running back. That was a hard lesson to learn, and I hope to God he's okay. But he looked a little shook up. But the man needs to learn how to slide. That's all I can say.
That's what the defender said.
He should go down to Florida. He should go down to Florida during the offseason, maybe hang out with the Yankees or the Mets, and take some time in the sliding pit, because he's a really good athlete. I think he's really showing some leadership on that team. I think he can really do good for the Giants if he doesn't get a career-ending concussion.
You know who impressed me last night on the Giants was the kid Singletary. That kid was a beast. Broke one for a touchdown. It is very hard to bring. I like this. This kid. I hope.
You know what really impressed me?
For the running game.
Yeah, what really impressed me with the Giants is, I think, which has not gotten enough credit, because they're no offense for but your offense, is retaining massive canal water. Is your D-line. You guys put a lot of pressure on Drake May, and you got to him a couple of times, and more important than that, you rushed him a bunch of times. And I think if their D-line continues to develop, and they get an offense, and they get some weapons for Mr. Dart, New York could be a problem for a lot of people in NFC East next year. I'm not saying they're playoff bound, but I think this could be one of those times where
the big discussion, Rob, during the game was they were saying that the team, even though despite the problems, saying that is a right now that can potential coaches, because some of the pieces there like to see. Might be out there.
It's really difficult. I'll tell you who I don't want to see. I don't want to see any of these has-been coaches that coached, for the last 20 years. They need something new. I don't want Belichick. I don't want Gruden. I don't want any of those has-beens. Mike McCarthy, any of those guys. It's time for a new generation. And if the Giants have any chance at fixing what's broken, they're going to need to get, a new type of coaching that comes in there. So that, I don't know that I have a name for you, because I'm just not that in tune with all the up and comers. Yeah. But I think you got to look, first of all, and not Spagnuolo either. As much as I think he's an amazing defensive coordinator, you don't bring him back either. I mean, you just got to, it's somebody that we don't know. It's somebody who's not a household name, who has a great resume, doing great work in the NFL, but not, somebody who's in the news every week. And they're going to find that person. And I think they're going to have to take a chance. There's some risk involved, but that's the way to get better.
Stuff, and that was the they had in the other entertainment booth. I mean, in the legal booth. Singer Ray J was arrested for making criminal threats with a gun on his podcast just week after he threatened his girlfriend podcast because he did something in the chat. This is the type of stuff dumb idiots that Ken would have to see. And guy is a major star. He's doing a live podcast. His baby mother comes during the live podcast, pick up the with her cousin and the cousin's husband. It's ugly. Pulls a gun. He's waving the gun on kids, claiming that the guy was trying to take down them. No, it is what it is.
Yep.
Asking him what he could do while he's on cameras. Crazy stuff. Also in the legal booth. Man, let's jump into this. Hegseth. Hegseth is under fire. Under fire. Under fire. We got. As you guys know, I've been talking on, chopping it up on this. Out of the war. Talked about this, and we're talking about any of the major news networks are really opened our eyes, talking about perspective and how it did sense it all. Rob kind of broke down and said that and the switch number one 500 barrels. I started saying funny that narco terrorist boats are similar to the nation's version of Bush's WM. You guys remember? Weapons of narrative, and that led to the invasion of the Middle East. And come to find out, it wasn't even about WMDs. Never any WM. All about oil and making his tax budget. Stocks. Hegseth is on fire right now because it's a big major story. It's starting to get big. It's starting to blow up. Hegseth turned around and talked about, and Squid said it on the show. The guy was hired to bring optic here for vision, boxing, and he's done a good job of bringing optics in. After this whole thing, I find this to be a very unprofessional guy. He knows he's under fire. He knows there's a lot of heat. The public opinion is bad about this. And he goes on the government White House Department of War website, and he posts Franklin, narco terrorist, and Franklin goes to the Hague, and it's kind of like a slap in the face of the things we're gonna. I'm not happy with this. This is a serious issue. A lot of people go back and forth on this. And R Squared, you said it on this. These boats, if they were even coming to, first of all, have to fill nowhere out there. Now I see people out here. We posted this, and people saying, "Well, they can carry the fuel and fill up, and give up that speed that you want, and space for the drugs." Well, it makes no sense. None of this. China and Russia are the biggest suppliers of fentanyl. I want to use that excuse. Those are the big. Now we get to this here. Where Hegseth is under fire because the timeline now been released. As you guys remember, boat attack, the most attack happened this September. Shortly after September, around Halloween, just before Halloween, Admiral Housley stepped down. Talked about the show. I asked Rob. And everybody gave their opinions on what they thought as to why, but we all felt that it got into correct me if I'm wrong. Housley or Southcon. Gentleman to the right, Admiral Bradley, Northcon. The issue that we're having now, that's now come out and what's being said, and now they're saying is the reason. They're saying that Senator Mark Kelly knew this, and this is why he released the video that led to the sedation threats and all this stuff. And now it's all really coming into play. They're saying that those 6 Democrats who were veterans already had saw the video what happened. Word is now that in that strike in September, 2 survivors saying there's another video where Hegseth ordered a strike to take the lives of the 2 survivors. Now, automatically, of engagement of war pop up. Everybody says, Squid's about to let it all out. Of engagement says that when somebody is no longer a threat, you have to take them in. That's it. There's no more. You don't shoot to kill. You don't do that. You're supposed to take. What you're saying is that wasn't done. Bradley had said that Hegseth had felt that survivors were a threat because they could still call in for help or backup by that order. So we've got this already coming. Now they've asked Trump. Trump has already said that he wouldn't have made the second call. He's already separating himself from this, already throwing Hegseth. So we have Admiral Housley, still hasn't released a statement. And in my opinion, Ken, I think he's lawyered up and ready to go. All going to come up. Eyes. So I'm going to start with R Squared, because those who don't know who R Squared is a retired U.S. Army Colonel, JAG officer, is he knows this. Not somebody just sitting here spewing off on facts. So I'm going to let Rob now get into break this very.
Yeah. So first of all, this is not, I mean, what we're talking about right now anyway, is not the conversation we had weeks ago about the policy of doing this. That's a whole separate issue. So we'll leave that aside for, another time if we want to revisit that. This is about international law and war crimes. And so, and by the way, it's not about rules of engagement. This is not a rules of engagement issue. Rules of engagement are our own internal restrictions that we place on levels of the chain of command and on our own targeting and release authority of weapons uses. And so obviously, Trump and Kegbreath have always been, pretty much trying to, do away with rules of engagement and just showing their complete ignorance and lack of compliance with the law and lack of compliance with policy and all that stuff. I'm not even going to get into that. Let's talk about international law and war crimes. And I won't do it as a professor. I'm going to do this in a very practical way to break it down for people, because this is likely the reason that Admiral Housley retired. He left months before he was supposed to. In fact, even when he resigned, he was going to stay on for a while, and then he left more suddenly. And so I think, as we had speculated before, it's very clear that he left in protest of the way that these strikes are being carried out. And so you have Admiral Bradley, who is the Special Operations Commander, because he was a Navy SEAL himself, did work in Afghanistan, did tremendous work, very well respected, but he's now in charge of the Special Operations Command. And so Kegbreath is trying to throw him under the bus because Trump's trying to take up
hold
for...
on. I just caught that. Are you calling him Kegbreath?
Yes. That's his name.
I just caught that. Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. So Trump and Kegbreath want to, carry on their, illegality and their whatever. And so they try to throw Admiral Bradley under the bus. And the question is, at some point, I would have to think that he had legal advisors with him. But then again, remember, one of the first things Trump and Kegbreath did was fire all the judge advocates general for all the services, including their deputies. And so they made it clear that legal advice was not welcome in this administration. I mean, they just did, right? And so if you want to, and I've read this because I know some of these people personally, but you have a former, the people they fired in January, at the beginning of the administration anyway, they formed a working group and they're writing out what would be their legal advice on some of these matters. And so I've read it. I agree with it 100%. And so the issue is this, when they, assuming the lawfulness of the strike on the boat, like I said, we're not going to get into the policy issue. So they struck the boat. And the question that we've always had is, what is the evidence? How do we know that those boats are carrying, narcotics or traffickers or anything else of an illegal nature? We don't know because I haven't released it. So if they have it, they need to show it to the members of Congress because thus far they have not. Senator Wicker on the Republican side has indicated that they're going to hold hearings on this now. So just maybe Congress will start doing its oversight and we'll be able to determine whether or not they have any legal basis to conduct these strikes. Okay, but let's put that aside for right now and look at what we do know. What we know is they ordered a strike on this particular boat in question. And, it doesn't take a lot. Remember, they're using a high-powered system. They're not shooting at it with a rifle. Okay, they're using advanced technology, and it pretty much destroys the boat. It shatters it. It tears it apart. And what they had was two people were clinging to wreckage in the Caribbean Sea. Okay, they're clinging to wreckage, clinging for dear life in surrounded by wreckage. And so that's what happens when you blow up a boat. And according to the Geneva Convention, the second convention, which specifically talks about shipwrecked individuals, says that once the person is shipwrecked, they are out of the fight. They are protected. You may not strike them. In fact, you're not only not allowed to strike them, you must render aid. You must render aid if possible. In other words, if there were U.S. ships nearby, they had to try to rescue them. That's what the law says. Plain and simple. Read the Geneva Convention. It's in the Geneva Convention. It's also in Common Article 3. That's in all the Geneva Conventions. It's also in the additional protocols that were signed in 1977, in Additional Protocol 2 of 1977. Now that one, they could argue that because the United States signed it in 1977. President Reagan sent it to the Senate for ratification, and the Senate never voted. They just buried it because they didn't want to go on record. So it is international law because everybody else signed it, but the United States technically didn't act on it. So let's put that one aside. But the Geneva Convention and Common Article 3 and everything else is very clear that once you have people, who have been, a vessel that has been struck and they're, basically they're shipwrecked, they're clinging to debris, right? There is no boat anymore. The boat has been destroyed. It's obliterated. So the question then is, what would be the point of the second strike? And so the original story was that they said, well, kill them all, no survivors. Well, that is a war crime. That is a direct violation of the Geneva Convention and the Geneva Convention number 2, as well as Common Article 3 of all 4 Geneva Conventions and other provisions. So the fact of the matter is that is called murder. That's not an act of war. That transforms into the crime of murder under domestic law and international law. Let's be clear about this, folks. This is not simply international law. This is also a matter of U.S. domestic law. They violated both international law, domestic law, and they committed the crime of murder if these people were shipwrecked. And all the evidence, again, they're not going to be forthcoming with it until Congress holds hearings. But according to descriptions of the video, you had the 2 survivors clinging to wreckage. That is not actively participating in hostilities. Okay? So the facts, as presented to us, we can only go by what we're given. And I agree with my colleagues in the Pentagon and elsewhere that this, as described, these constitute war crimes. So that's the way that looks. And then the other piece of it would be that then the question is, as we looked at in the video, and again, I maintain that video was a bad idea, and even worse, it was very poorly done. But nevertheless, this is what they were concerned about, this type of thing. And the order if it came from President Trump, or it came from Secretary Kegbreath, or it came from Admiral Bradley, it was in illegal order. It was an illegal order. This is what the law, domestic and international, but let's just focus on domestic law. U.S. law says this was an illegal order and it should not have been followed. And so whoever ordered it is responsible for a war crime. Whoever committed it is most likely also, culpable for a war crime. That's how this works, folks. And so, Mr. Kegbreath could find himself getting a subpoena, to The Hague, because, obviously the Trump administration isn't going to do anything. And if he ever finds himself under accountability, Trump will pardon him before he leaves office. So domestically, not much is going to happen about it. All right. Everybody's speculating that he's on the outs and he could be fired soon. That's fine. Trump is never going to let him be, extradited. But the bottom line is, if we were doing things properly, if we were following proper procedure, if we were following the law, domestic and international, Kegbreath, Admiral Bradley, and maybe others could be facing an international tribunal for a war crime. Now, the law says we're supposed to do it ourselves. But again, it'll be a cold day in hell before this administration ever agrees to do that, because their whole rhetoric, going back to the campaign, remember Trump pardoned Eddie Gallagher, remember Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher, who committed numerous war crimes, not one where he had a lapse of judgment. He committed a series of violations and was investigated and was prosecuted and convicted and sentenced, all proper procedure, all with plenty of facts to support his convictions and his punishment. Trump pardoned him because his belief, and Kegbreath agrees with him, is that we do not hold ourselves responsible under international law. We can do whatever we want. Now, I get it. Russia, China, there are other countries out there that don't comply with the Geneva Conventions or this body of law very well. I get that. It's frustrating to always be the good guys. Sometimes you got to fight. But they've made blanket statements that we're not going to follow these rules. And that's very dangerous. And it's a violation. So I'll stop there for a moment because I don't want to monopolize this. I don't know where you want to go with this, but that's my assessment.
I want to ask Ken, because Ken, you guys have followed the show. Ken is a fan of history. Ken is also a fan of the things in the military. And Ken also is friends with Rob because he practice law. And your thoughts, Ken, on this, because you've always been that guy. Talked about the Watergates. You've talked about these scandals in government that we've seen over the years. I was like, if this is anybody's interest too, and Diesel.
It has. And let me also say something about Rob's resume. Rob is currently a professor at Fitchburg State University, adjunct faculty member, and he also teaches courses on international law, war crimes, and other things. So this is a man who not only has done it, he's an academic. So when he tells you something, believe it, because he's brought the chops. There's also another issue I wish to raise, and Rob's absolutely right on the issue regarding the Geneva Convention. No question about that. And I'm not going to go there because he did an excellent job and I couldn't do any better. There's also another set of civilian rules I want to talk about, if I may. If you grant me 5 minutes to go all geek on you.
No.
There is something called, it started back in 1979 with International Convention on Maritime Search and Rescue, known as the SAR Convention. This is an international treaty that's been agreed to by the United States. And it's very important to understand, once the United States signs on to a treaty and it's confirmed by the Senate, that treaty becomes U.S. law. Okay? It also led, this was a broadening of the 1974 International Convention of Safety of Life at Sea. And finally, this led to the one everyone's going to be talking about, which I'll spend most of my time, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, known as UNCLOS. This is very important because UNCLOS is the first time in history that required all signatories to the treaty to come to the aid of a stranded vessel or a person in distress whether it be military or civilian. Up until 1982, these conventions only applied to civilian aircraft, sea craft. Militaries were exempt. UNCLOS said, now, no, if you're a military craft and you see someone in distress, you must render aid. Unless, of course, you're in the middle of a armed conflict. But the moment that armed conflict is over, you have to render aid. So, again, that's separate and distinct from the Geneva Convention. This is the UN Charter. And the reason I say that, and Rob's absolutely right, because he probably would pardon Keg Breath and the rest of those clowns. However, here's the thing about a pardon, and this is what people don't understand. If you accept a pardon, you have to accept that you're guilty of the underlying crime. That's what people don't understand. Why that's important is you then openly admit yourself to civil liability in the United States Court of Claims. If you have an action against the United States or anyone operating within the scope of their duty as an agent of the United States, i.e. the Secretary of, how shall I put it? What do my colleagues refer to? The Secretary of Compensation. When he renamed the Department of Defense to Department of War, he was compensating for something, and I'll leave your imagination to what he was compensating for. You can be sued in the United States Court of Claims. You don't have immunity because it's a civil thing. We know this because of Jones v. Clinton. If you guys remember when Paula Jones sued Bill Clinton for sexual harassment, the Supreme Court said, no, the president doesn't enjoy civil liability, a civil immunity as opposed to criminal one. Remember, when the Supreme Court said Trump was immune for anything done in the presidency, that was only criminal. They never said anything about civil. So if they take the pardon, they can be sued under the in the United States Court of Claims under the UNCLOS statute. The other thing we need to understand is, and I'm going to,
hold on. I gotta just mention something that was questioned later. But now that
okay, I'll stop then. I'll stop then.
No, don't stop. We'll go back. Civil liability. And you brought up the Paula Jones as one of the questions that I had later on for you, but now we're on this topic. We're seeing President Trump talk to the nonstop. And if this was in the public sector and you were a boss, you'd be fired, be protected. I know we talked about this on the show. You said that civil liability can't sue a president. Can these reporters who aren't fighting back hold all of these threats that are now on camera? Can they hold all of that and wait till he gets out of office and then file a civil case?
No, because harassments require you to be within your own chain of command. He's a third party. Unless they can prove that Trump did something to cajole their superiors to allow it to happen, then maybe. But no, he's a third party. He's shooting off his mouth. It's part of your job. No.
Well, these people have no recourse.
No.
It's insane how he talks to these people. I wouldn't take it. I'm sorry. I'm going to say something to him if he was to talk to me like that.
I think they should. They should. Their recourse is going to be in the court of public opinion. But if you're looking for some kind of legal action, no. Unless and here's the caveat, he makes some kind of physical threat, like he's going to have them killed or hung or even arrested. That's the thing. If he says he's going to have them arrested, then maybe you have an action for a threat under color of law. Maybe. I don't know. That's virgin territory, but it's possible.
So if you were an attorney and you were hit up, let's just say you were a government attorney and Admiral Housley came in, you're telling him, hey, quiet statements, right? Kind of walk me through what you would advise him.
Well, it depends. Am I advising Admiral Housley?
Yeah.
No, don't release any statements. Make sure you have backup copies of every single thing that you got from anybody at the Department of Compensation, Pete Hegseth, and the president, because you're going to need it. Put in a memo, and I'm sure Rob would be better to answer this, and said, look, Mr. President, I am saying this as a career military officer. You should not do this. for these reasons. I'm advising you that I believe this is a war crime, a violation of these UN statutes. We have an obligation to render aid, blah blah blah. So, and you're doing so. I'm putting you on record as giving you advice that you can't do this. So
Well,
they
if they
can't say,
removed
"Well,
it- if they remove those JAG officers, Rob, go to them.
Well, I mean, there are other people there. It's just they're probably not encouraged to speak up if they're even allowed in the room. I mean, you'd have to be in the room and it's classified. So, who's in the White House Situation Room? You've got, members of the senior Pentagon leadership and, who's there with them. That'll be part of the investigation that Congress conducts as to whether or not they had legal advice, whether the lawyers were present, what was the advice that was given, and, did they follow it, kind of a thing. And so that this is not a new thing. That comes up all the time when we do an investigation into some issue like this. We always look at that, because if they had gotten bad legal advice, then that provides them some cover. Following orders is not a defense. And so it'll be a question of who gave the order and how far down the chain of command it was passed, all kinds of intricate command issues as well as legal issues in how this all works out. What's interesting, though, is, of course, the administration, once they realized that they were caught basically admitting to a violation, because they were being, they were throwing all this bravado out there, and then they realized they were admitting to criminality. So they all of a sudden came up with 3 different lies. But remember, they were saying, oh, well, it was, they had to get rid of the, the stuff from the boat was still floating, right? The narcotics or what have you. So they had to do a second strike on the boat to make sure that all that sunk to the bottom of the sea. It's like, well, that's a load of crap, right? I mean, it's not sitting there floating and you can go and get it. So this does go back to the idea about why are we using these hundreds of millions of dollar weapon systems, these missiles, drone attacks or aircraft attacks, when you could just send a Coast Guard cutter or even a Navy ship and use more routine weapons, and they can't fight back. I mean, the Navy or the Coast Guard could easily outpower one of these little boats. And so, why are we doing that? We should be interdicting them. I have no problem with stopping drug smuggling and stopping narco terrorists. And I don't care if they die in the process. That's never been my issue. My issue is tactically, we're doing this stupidly. And I think we're doing it for 2 reasons. Number one, it's the showmanship, right? This is the clown show and it's all about showmanship. And number 2, this has nothing to do with drug trafficking. If it had to do with drug trafficking, we would be doing it effectively and properly, but it's not. It's the same thing we talked about before. This is about Venezuela. This is about the United States trying to, look, I would have no problem if Maduro was driven out of power and a freely elected government took over. That would be a great improvement in the region, and certainly for the people of Venezuela, who deserve better than what they're getting from Chavez and now Maduro. But the bottom line is that's a different issue. But right now, this is the United States trying to, number one, play wag the dog while Trump's in trouble politically. And also, again, if this was about drug trafficking and narco-terrorism, we wouldn't be picking Venezuela. We would be going after Colombia. We would be going after Mexico. We would be going after all kinds of other countries. Venezuela ranks near the bottom. And you said this at the beginning of the show, Sinister One, with China and Russia with fentanyl. But Venezuela ranks at the bottom of our drug trafficking threats. They're not innocent by any means. I mean, anybody who's doing it deserves to be held accountable. But the fact of the matter is, why Venezuela? They're not the ones you go for if you're trying to affect drug trafficking. Oh, and by the way, we know that Trump just pardoned illegally, just pardoned the former leader of Honduras, who was properly investigated. By the way, it was Trump's own administration who did this case. He's blaming Biden. It was his own Trump 1 Department of Justice that started this, but just pardoned him, with all kinds of false statements about it. So it's not about drug trafficking. Trump doesn't care about drug trafficking. This is about Venezuela and about getting U.S. control over Venezuelan resources. Sorry to say.
Yeah, that's what I feel. And the funny thing is Osquith talked about this whole optics thing. And like I said, Trump does a good job of making people look bad. Brings National Guards into cities, towns, and he says the police aren't doing the job, and he's making the police. I saw them blowing narco-terrorist boats. Here we are. We're just shitting on the Coast Guard right now. Because I hate to say this, but if you go to the Coast Guard YouTube page, Coast Guard has tons of videos of them busting drug smugglers with what? 2 Apache helicopters with 50 calibers and a Coast Guard cutter boat, just as Rob said. And they do a damn good job of securing evidence and securing snitches who are going to flip on other people. And they have evidence that Ken would be hired to defend these guys. The Coast Guard was doing a very good job with these Apaches. And somebody said, well, by just blowing them up, they're no longer a threat. I'm like, look, if you're in one of these boats and 2 Apaches are above you, it's like Star Wars. Anakin, I have the higher ground with a 50 caliber. If you don't comply, we're sending you to the bottom of the ocean with a hail of 50 caliber bullets. We don't need $1 billion or $1 billion in satellites and stuff to blow boats out the water. And the Coast Guard was doing a very damn good job of doing it. Why are we making the Coast Guard look bad right now? Go ahead, Ken.
Okay. You alluded to my love of history before, so I'm going to give you a history lesson. During the 1980s, in the heyday of the cocaine cowboys, there were a lot of people, the cartels, basically in Colombia, but also in Mexico and Panama, were running high speedboats. These were the old cigarette boats they used to use in racing into Florida to drop off cocaine. Okay. And they also were using private planes to land in private air force in Florida. So, but that's 30 years ago. They don't do it anymore. Why? Very simple. We got the Coast Guard, and it was then Department of Transportation, Department of Justice, now Department of Homeland Security, got real good at using ground-based radars and blimps, believe it or not, and basically created a radar picket line from Florida to Texas. So the idea, this image of us running boats in there, that's 30 years ago. It's not how they bring drugs into the country anymore. It's just too difficult because you can be picked up on radar and we'll find you. And exactly as what you and Rob said, they'll land and all of a sudden there'll be DEA with some local cops sitting there go, hey, we've got a machine gun pointing at you. They're going to give up. Number one. Number two, how do drugs come into this country? Do either one of you know, want to say, I'm talking about logistics. How does a drug dealer or a drug cartel in, let's say, Venezuela, get his drugs from Venezuela to New York City? Would you like me to tell you?
I know because I've prosecuted them.
Okay. Rob, why don't you tell us how you do it these days? The majority of them. I'm not talking about an occasional one. Well, it's 2 ways generally. One, they use a mule, which is a human being, to bring them across a land bridge someplace in Mexico. And I'll spare the various ways they do it. There's also, the other big way is they use container ships. Because here's, I don't know if you understand the logistics of container. You, Sinister One, let's say you want to ship something from Brockton to San Francisco. Okay? You want to send 10 million Sinister One production t-shirts to sell on the West Coast. You can call up any number of shipping companies and rent one of their containers, shove it in there. They'll pick up the container from your front yard. They'll drop off the container in your front yard on Craig Street. You load it up. You call them up. You said, "Hey, we're done." They'll send a flatbed. They'll put the container on there. They'll bring it to the seaport of Boston, and they'll stick it on a ship along with 20 other million other containers. And assuming it's a Panamax container ship or smaller, they'll go through the Panama Canal. And then they'll show up in the port of San Francisco or the port of Oakland, and they'll sit in a yard until somebody comes to pick it up. Do you know how many containers get searched every year, percentage-wise, the ones sitting in the yards?
I'm gonna say 1%. Not even.
Not even. Not even. 1/100th of 1% of the containers are actually exempt. Most
It's too resource intensive. You can't.
right. Yeah. If you go to, if you have some time, and it's really good, take a tour of the Port of New York, Port of Elizabeth. They actually have tours for costs you about $20. I've taken it. It's great. It's fascinating. They'll take you to the yard, the control center. It's excellent. But there are literally containers from as far as the eye can see. So if you're a drug dealer in Venezuela, you set up a phony company based in Costa Rica. You fill up a container, half of legitimate items like TVs or computers or rock salt. Rock salt's really popular. And you stick it in this container. And you ship it up to the Port of Elizabeth in New York. And then some truck driver picks it up and drops it off in some warehouse. Probably in the Bronx or Brooklyn. And that's how you get the drugs to the country. They're not running drugs on a freaking, fishing boat, which has maybe, if you're a good day, has a range of 150 nautical miles. That's on a good day. And that's assuming
exactly right.
you don't run into a storm, which is, as anyone who's ever been on a ship.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, you guys know what it's like when you get out in the open ocean, right? These people who are on these nitwits who are on my page, they're trying to support this administration with craziness. And like I said, as you guys see in the pictures here, Admiral Housley, who stepped down. Now we've got the timeline. We first talked about Admiral Housley, kind of like, okay, it's kind of speculation. Now we know. This is definitely was.
But here's the thing. Let's assume that you've got a boat that there's numerous. The Germans called them milk cows. And back in World War II, you had big submarines supplying food, fuel, and weapons to smaller U-boats that were going down, working on the wolf packs in the North Atlantic. Okay, let's assume you've got 20 of them or 30 of them. It's probably on a picket line. They'll take you to Florida, which is the lowest. Where are you going to dock that boat? There are only a few commercial ports in Florida. Most of the ports, I think Rob will back me up, are for pleasure boats and yachts and stuff like that. You bring a fishing boat into a marina that primarily services smaller boats or yachts, that's like setting up a red flag that I'm a drug dealer. Hello.
No, look, it's porous, and if it was practical, they could get some of those boats in. But here's the thing: the volume is too small.
Right.
It's not cost effective. What they do is, and off air, I can tell you about how we know all this, but they know how to get through the border. They know how to get into certain places, and it's a volume thing. A certain percentage is going to get detected, and so they just flood the zone. They know that less than 1% of containers will be searched, and so they fill up 50 to 100 containers, and they lose
exactly.
It's the cost of doing business to them. It's not a big deal.
Exactly.
Here's the funny thing. Hold on, Ken. Here's the funny thing. I've watched a lot of narco movies and things of that sort, drug dealing movies. And I've always said, if I was going to become corrupt, if I was going to be a guy who would be the next big drug dealer, get the name of the show where very popular, where everyday guy becomes a drug dealer. But I said,
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. One of the things that I would do, if I was this guy and I had to turn to that life, I would send 2 loads. One that I would snitch on so it purposely gets caught and draws everybody to the smaller load so the bigger load gets.
You don't think that happens?
I'm pretty sure it happens because
I know for a fact it happens. Not only that, I'll give you one better. Let's say, Sinister One, you decide you're going to become the fentanyl supplier for Greater Massachusetts. You probably knew who your other fentanyl dealers are and suppliers. So you get one of your homeboys who's got a problem to go snitch out, become a CI, the state police, and he snitches out the competition. You don't think that? I know for a fact that happens. I've had clients who've done that. Can't say any names, but I've had clients who've done that. And the state police know it. Because I remember having a conversation with a detective. He goes, yeah, we know. We're not stupid. We know he's snitching on his
And that's what I'm saying. I'd have a guy
But
be
but
like,
his
hey,
but this is what he told me. He said, "Counselor, you don't think we're gonna put the arm on the guys we arrest to cinch out your guy?"
I've always said that. I've always felt like, why wouldn't you just take a small load, have your guy say, hey, you're calling. You're going to get stopped. You're going to be tying up all their reasons. Trust me, you're going to do a little time for this. We'll take care of you and your family
Yeah.
while you're in jail. Make
That's-
sure you're taken care of. But the bigger load is going this way.
But let's, if I could, I want to go back to the issue here with Keg Breath and some of the others, because, you know, if in fact they gave these unlawful orders, and if one of the international tribunals decides to take action on it, and it wouldn't be unforeseeable for that, you know, on the one hand, the United States will certainly not give them over, not this administration anyway. If there's another administration of either party, I would encourage them to either prosecute ourselves or turn them over, because that's the right thing to do on a number of bases. But the fact is that, you know, not that Keg Breath is intellectually interesting or anything like that, but he couldn't travel outside of the United States. None of these people could travel outside of the United States, because they'll get picked up the minute they cross into foreign soil and then be turned over to a tribunal. So they're affected. Now, granted, the United States is huge. You can have a very nice life without leaving the United States, but at the same time, it would be rather significant. Condition, you know, for them. You know, I don't think it matters to them. They're doing what they're doing for all kinds of reasons. But I just wanted to close the loop on that, because that's where we
Absolutely.
No.
I will say this. Yes, the United States is a big country, but why don't you call up Cancun Cruz and ask him if he ever stays in the United States? Because you got to remember, both Mexico and Canada are signatories to the ICC.
In Trump troubles, wow, we went a long time on that. We still got a couple of big topics to talk about. President Trump had his cabinet meeting today. If you guys saw it, it was another love fest. The guy was falling asleep at his own cabinet meeting. It was, watch it. It was on YouTube. I had somebody talk to me and say that it all deals with cabinet meeting. Cabinet meeting. Other than that, for you. Today was the day Keg Breath, which I like, was under fire. He went on this whole rant, and it was typical, as Rob would say, it's the typical MAGA deflection. All the stuff, and he turns around and he says, this is what you people do. We're all in your nice offices with air conditioning. He just deflects and just starts insulting people and completely ignoring it. What stuck out to me, guys, when I watched this was President Trump, who was sitting right beside him. And I'll tell you right now, they're talking about this case. President Trump's body language and facial expression looked to me like he was saying to himself, I'm not taking it. But we all know that if this strike did go down, President Trump was there watching whatever call I'm going. But Hegseth is really running for cover. Looks like crap that this is coming through. I tried to hang Bradley out to dry. Bradley's already, this isn't happening. Not doing this. So it's going to be real interesting. Like I said, this video that Ellie and the other other 5 veterans put out. And again, I have to say veterans because this video went out, and you whether right or wrong. This video went out, the first thing they clarified that this was a partisan video. Strictly speaking, those within the directed it to who they were talking. They said who they were. And Mr. Kelly went on to talk about the MJ oath, which President Trump takes and posts on Truth Social oath. It shows that Kelly was right. R-squared, you're laughing. I'm going to let you, because you talk to some veterans, because veterans are divided. If you see some veterans on my own page are coming out and saying, you don't know the oath, you didn't wear. What I hate is when people say to me, you didn't wear a uniform, you have no right to speak. People are saying that to me. I know the Constitution. I can read and understand what Kelly is saying. Because I didn't wear a uniform doesn't mean that I don't know what Mr. Kelly and that oath mean. I'll let you speak. You're a veteran.
No, I mean, it's not even controversial. The oath is to uphold the Constitution and the law. That's what the oath is. And to follow the lawful orders of those appointed above you. And so everybody is trained from their first day at basic training to their last day in uniform after 30 brilliant years of service. They are all trained in what their responsibilities are. And first and foremost, that is to not follow illegal orders.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's nothing controversial or unclear about it.
Why do we have this disconnect of veterans who think that an order is an order and you have to follow it?
No, now look, most of the time, first of all, it's very rare for a chain of command to give an unlawful order. Okay, it doesn't happen that often. In this administration, a little bit more frequently than we would like to think. But overall, it's not a very frequent occurrence because our people are trained and disciplined. And even if they make mistakes, they're not giving out illegal orders and not committing war crimes. We don't do very much of that. It does happen. And when it happens, our responsibility is to investigate it and hold people accountable at an appropriate level. Doesn't mean that everybody gets the maximum. It means that we do whatever is the appropriate accountability for that, appropriate discipline based on the level of violation and the intent behind it and everything else. But here's the thing. Orders are presumed to be lawful. That's the one thing that we have to remember. And so if you're not sure if the order is lawful or not, then you have to remember that an order is presumed to be lawful unless it is patently unlawful. And so what does patently unlawful mean? Patently unlawful, as everybody is trained from day one to understand, is an order to commit a felony. In other words, to commit murder, to commit a war crime, to commit rape, to commit robbery, things that we would take for granted as we understand things to be felonies, okay? Those are things that are illegal orders. To mistreat a prisoner. These are things that are patently illegal. Now, sometimes there could be an issue of nuance. So guess what? You're a rank and file member of a unit, and you're not sure if you've received an order that's lawful or not. You don't have to figure it out yourself. This is part of the training. I know because I received it and I've conducted it so many times. And that is that you ask for clarification. You say, "Excuse me, sir or ma'am, I don't know if I understood that right. Are you telling me to do X? Or is that lawful?" You're allowed to ask the question. That's not insubordinate to ask the question. And if you're still concerned about it, you're allowed to go up the chain of command to make sure that you're being given a proper order or not being given an illegal order. That's okay to do that. Now, obviously, in the middle of a fight, that could be difficult to do. But for the most part, there's the opportunity to seek clarification. And if you can't do it through the chain of command, you can go to the lawyer and ask it. You can go to a chaplain. I know that's a little bit weird, but chaplains are allowed to receive such questions and they can help get an answer. And so my point is that you're not alone. You're not on an island where you have to figure it out yourself as some young soldier who doesn't know what the hell the law is. You know what I'm saying? You get the training. The training is supposed to help you identify or spot an issue. And then you ask questions. You ask questions. You don't just have to sit there and figure it out yourself. And so, if a private follows an unlawful order, we're likely to have a little bit of sympathy in how that may have happened, unless it's obvious, right? Where if you're being told to murder somebody, you don't do it. That's easy. But when you're talking about upper level members of the chain of command, Admiral Bradley, if he received such an order from Kegbreath, and if Bradley then relayed that order to whoever it was who pushed the button, basically, it wasn't Bradley who did that, then, at some point during this chain of command where the order is being passed down, all of those people, especially at the senior level, knew they didn't need clarification. But if they did, they have their JAGs right there and they have other people to ask right there. So there's no excuse for this. None.
And
I'd like to raise one other point, which Rob is too modest to say. In his early part of his career, he was stationed at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, which unfortunately
the chaplain school.
That's where the chaplain school for the U.S. Army is located, where the chaplains go to learn how to become chaplains in the military. One of the faculty, both lay and religious, and the lay faculty had a JAG officer explaining the chaplains their responsibility. And guess who was one of the instructors for those chaplains? Our very own Colonel Resnick early in his career. So when Colonel Resnick says those chaplains can do this, yeah, he's one of the guys who was training them. You're talking to one of the guys who was training them.
Z-Man, the veteran military must have. Wow, we're at 8:04 left. Also, we got to touch base on this. We can't spend too long on this. Different topic. President Trump orders 500 more troops, National Guard, to somebody on my page. Fascism starts. We and had this situation with this man here. This is what I hate. Some tragedy, freaking hit. Sometimes some of the crimes are committed by people trained, turned our backs on, sided with. If you guys remember Bin Laden, Afghanistan, he was one of these freedom fighters that they make movies about. Worked with him and helped him out, and then stuck it to him in 9/11. This gentleman here who shot the National Guardsman, Afghan who worked with U.S. military, working with the CIA, came in under the Biden program to kind of help these Afghans go back to the country.
No,
Trump's
hold a second.
team-
I got to correct you. The program you're talking about was created by Biden, but he applied
I
for
was
it,
just
was granted
you cut me
asylum
off before I
under
could
Trump.
explain that. You cut me off
That's
before I
the-
could explain that.
Sorry,
That's
sorry.
what I got. I got that already here. But the process went through Biden. The vetting went through Trump. Problem here I have with problem here is that they have now proof that this gentleman reached out to his handler, his CIA handler. He was upset because he couldn't get work. Press. There were all these things going on with him, and no one was cause or help, which led to why he did what he did. Tragic. Bad. It sucks that it come to this, but the vetting and all of that was. If this gentleman was true making calls, go ahead, R Squared.
We're missing a couple of steps here.
Okay, yep,
he
go
was
ahead.
part of an elite unit of Afghan nationals working with U.S. and coalition forces in some pretty high, let's just say some complex operations. All right.
Okay.
In order to be part of that unit, he had to have been vetted. He had to have gone through training and all kinds of things. This wasn't somebody off the street that was looking, to maybe be a translator for U.S. troops and then hoping to get to the United States and out of, the new Taliban regime. This was a guy that had served with distinction in this elite unit. He had the training, the background, the experience, the connections. And so when he, remember President Biden for the withdrawal of Afghanistan, we talked about this on the show, was widely criticized, rightly or wrongly. He was widely criticized in part for not getting more of the Afghan nationals out who helped coalition forces. Remember that criticism that we didn't we promised them and we didn't get them all out. And so the Biden administration was criticized, rightly or wrongly, for being too slow and not getting enough out. Well, this guy was one of the ones they did get out. And they made sure that despite him being in this unit, he still went through the regular vetting to be able to get to the United States. But that unit was already the vetting that he needed. All right. So there was no question that he would qualify to come to the United States. And then once he got here, he applied for asylum, which is not uncommon. And as Ken started to say, it was the Trump administration who did the vetting for the asylum claim and approved it. He was given asylum under the Trump administration. But this isn't even about Biden or Trump. This isn't a political thing whatsoever. It is a shame. It is disgusting to me that immediately when this happened, the first thing that Trump does is blame Biden. he doesn't talk about this being a tragedy. He eventually said some of the right things. And, he called the families, as presidents are supposed to do. I would love to hear a recording of those phone calls, right? Because I'm sure they were all bullshit. But the fact of the matter is that he instantly tried to make this political and said, oh, this was a Biden thing. Well, you should have done your homework, jackass, because it was your thing. Okay, your administration gave him asylum. But at the end of the day, this has nothing to do with his service in Afghanistan with the U.S. forces. It has nothing to do with Biden giving him the ability to come here. It had nothing to do with Trump giving him asylum. This was a guy who became radicalized after coming to the United States. He wasn't radicalized in Afghanistan. There was no way that vetting would have picked up on this. This began in the years. He's been here for years. And he wasn't on the radar at the time that he got here, or he would have never been, given asylum. This was a guy who got radicalized for whatever reason. It doesn't matter why, because he's a disgusting piece of shit, and I hope he gets executed after he's convicted. But the bottom line is that that it doesn't matter what his reasons are, because he went and committed cold-blooded murder to 2 innocent National Guard troops. And it's not politics at all.
Okay, I agree with most of what Rob said, but I think there's some other important details that got left out. One of the things that he claimed, rightly or wrongly, was that he was not getting the financial support that he was promised. And I was very suspect, so I called up a number of immigration attorneys who specialize in this area. I don't. There's a very highly specialized people, because there's an incredibly complex set of laws about how people who help the U.S. government in Afghanistan and Iraq, people forget we also bring in Iraqis as well, qualify under these certain programs for asylum. And they told me to a person that when Biden was president, they brought them in. One of the things they got, once they were established, they got a stipend, they got job help, they got job training. They basically acted social workers. When Trump came in, he gutted that program. He gutted it down to zero. Okay, so all those people, now I'm going to be very clear who I'm talking about. These people work with our military and intelligence community. They were vetted. They were allowed to come into the United States legally. They were either given TPS or asylum. Some very rare cases, I'm talking maybe 1%, they were given green cards or lawful permanent resident. Most of them weren't even given that. Okay, and then Trump just gutted this program. That's not politics. These are people who work for us. We owe them. Now, they may not be military veterans, but we still owe them.
Oh, of course. And my point is that whatever they were promised, and if they didn't get the money that they were promised because the rules changed under this administration, my point is you don't go and commit cold-blooded murder of 2 National Guard troops. And so I don't care that he lost his money at this point. He doesn't deserve it. But the issue is that the administration immediately tries to play politics with this, and then people start believing it. And at the end of the day, this guy deserved to come here when he did, and there were no warning signs. There was no reason not to have done it, and there was no reason for Trump not to give them asylum. They shouldn't have gutted the program, of course. But even if they did, then you don't commit cold-blooded murder.
Oh, I agree with you. If I said anything that would imply
no, you didn't. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, that's all
I don't care if this guy's sleeping under a bridge in DC or Boston, whatever, and is eating out of trash cans.
Yeah.
That does not entitle him to go out and take out 2 National Guards individuals who are just doing their duty. No, I am not saying that at all. If this man burned, look, I'm a criminal defense attorney, and if called upon, I will defend him. However, when he gets convicted, it's not an if, but when he gets convicted and he gets the death penalty, I'm not losing any sleep over it. I've had clients where those cases I've lost, where I've lost sleep, where I think I was where, that, hey, we should have cut this individual break. He is not going to be one of them. Don't know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
No, I mean, and it's worse because now he's casting aspersions on all the other people who we brought into this country under this program. Because people are going to say, well, if this guy's going to go off the rails for whatever reason, how can we trust everybody else who did serve honorably? Now, point disclosure, I have never met a single person who is qualified under this program. I know some of their lawyers who I know socially, and for reasons of security, they can't talk about their cases for both fear of getting isolated by ICE and Trump administration. They're also scared that there are agents of ISIS and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad who are in the United States right now, would more than happy to kill them for their brothers in Afghanistan. They're actually scared that they'll get murdered on American soil, if you can believe that. At least that's what they tell me.
Good stuff. We're at 8:50. These are the banners. Out of here. A lot of stuff to talk about. Those that we have. Also, that produce Turnbuckle podcast is coming up at 9:30. Drafting the circuits is tonight. Then today we got in the Bat Bus After Hours Workforce out the Uber rate. Merge career if you fail and need a job, they have a program now. Merge Church Thursdays 3 to 6. Kentucky. The 40th annual Dr. Martin Luther King in Mansfield. Kevin Catskill. Don't forget Bat Buses. Jeremiah and the United Austria 9-day in the code there. You'll be able to help young man. A Walker versus on Turnbuckle. December battling in Philadelphia. Battle rap. December 12th. Stockton Tree Lighting is December 4th. Ladies Night Skills and Stockton Arts Paint. Last Saturday of the month. That's it, guys. We got to get ready to get out of here. We got to get in. Let these guys go around the horn. Regarding, I said, Bob is also a JAG officer. On right now in this adds to the votes and people that's like Ken go first. Ken?
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to all of our listeners and viewers, all 12 of you. Happy belated Thanksgiving to everyone. Happy early Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa. Happy Gay Indian Liberation Rights Day to all of you. Guys, gals, non-binary, stay warm, stay safe, stay informed. We'll be back in the new year.
And I forgot to mention too, we got a special elections. The people at Flip, Osquid.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, my point is I think the gap is too great, although it got much closer than anybody thought that it would. Whatever party you subscribe to, it's always great to make the other party work hard for what it's supposed to be safe seats. It tells you that people are paying attention, and this is a product of independence, abandoning Trump at the largest margin they've ever done in history. So it tells you that there's a real problem. So I don't think the Democrats are going to steal the seat. It's going to be a hell of a lot closer than it ever should have been or would have been. And that's a warning sign to this administration. But I don't think the seat flips, no.
Ken, your thoughts on that real quick before I let Rob close it?
I agree with Rob 100% on everything he said. When I was actively doing politics, one of the most important things everyone used to tell is spend your money where you can think you do the most good. Yeah. So if you got a place where you're, you're there's a 90% chance you're going to win, you're not going to put any money there. If you got in the district, you're 90% lose, you're not going to put your money there. 50-50, that's where you put your money. If Republicans are forced to spend money in a district where they should be winning when they're not, that means that's taking money away from other districts. That being said, Mark Twain had a great quote, if I may. People should be very careful about making predictions, especially about the future. I'm considering my predictions for the NFL were so bad I'm keeping my mouth shut.
And then Odd Square, before we get out of here, let you close out with some regards to this.
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, thanks for listening. I hope you find it informative. You don't always have to agree with us, but we do our best to tell you the facts and the law that we base our opinions on. And if you want to come to a different conclusion, I guess that's absolutely the right that you have. But I hope you at least listen to what we have to say and take that to heart. Thank you for that, and stay informed. And we will see you in 2026.
That's these guys come back. It's going to be playoff time.
Mm-hmm.
Be headed into the Super Bowl. Going to be breaking it down. Again, these guys are writing people over at the corridor. You want to make sure to go over to the corridor and check them out. Where, you know, like I've said this before, Rob is open, back hurting, carrying Ken 24/7 over there on the corridor. Ken's face is just on the corner. Everything I see is Rob.
Yeah.
Rob shares some good. And I gotta mention Rob real quick before we get out of here. You share some pieces from also Kathy Richards.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. She's a BC professor.
Okay.
Heather
Oh,
Richardson.
really? Oh, I didn't know she was from BC.
Yeah,
Oh,
Heather Cox Richardson. She's a BC professor. I don't share all of her stuff, but sometimes she incorporates a lot into one piece, and it saves me the time to break it all down myself. So I wind up sharing some of her work. She's got quite a big following in her own right. So, but yeah, she's from Boston College.
So let's get ready to get out of here. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We've only got 2 shows left. Take off for the holiday hiatus. I got Sugar Shane Jordan coming. I've got a young lady who's mother of the on the flyer, and that's it for 25. SpongeBob, Ava, take us.
Well, see you next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to The Booth on Hoobazoo and HatcherRadio.com. Please follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The Booth is a Sinister One production hosted by Sinister One.
I've got to start hanging out with friends that are a little more intelligent and understand politics and stuff. It's just that I'm up on this level up here, and all my friends are down here. Me, nah. You guys, nah. Maybe a little more down in here. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
I smoke, I drink, I do my thing. These bitches hating, so you know I got to make it plain. Don't do cocaine with your chick, my main. We stick together, true forever, yeah, you know we bang. I miss those days, which was easy. If only I made it, bitch, don't repeat. Now that I done upgraded, I've been upstate, but y'all think I'm playing. And I got a hit now for these weak assholes who think I ain't slaying. Try me, and I'll probably end up laughing, cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip, I don't need that shit, I got my own now. I get hurt, I get tired of fussing, fighting, guess I gotta crack down. Don't mess with me, cause on everything, I'ma have to bring the whole city out.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.